Have you ever woken up in the morning, looked around and just breathed in the stillness of your own home? No rushing footsteps down the hallway. No clanging pots and pans you didn't ask for. Just peace. There's something deeply comforting about being the master of your own space, especially as we grow older. And yet for many people over 65, the idea of living alone often comes with whispers of worry. Won't you get lonely? Or isn't that risky? But here's the truth that doesn't get talked about enough. Living alone after 65 can actually be one of the healthiest, most empowering decisions you make. You see, independence doesn't fade with age. It evolves. And when you're no longer juggling the chaos of a full household or the expectations of others, something remarkable happens. You begin to rediscover yourself, your preferences, your rhythm, your joy. Living alone isn't about isolation. It's about clarity, peace, and being unapologetically in tune with your needs. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. The surprising benefits of living alone after 65, not just emotionally, but physically, mentally, and spiritually. These aren't just feel-good ideas. They're grounded in real experiences and solid lifestyle choices that can enhance your health and happiness in ways you might not expect. Let's begin with something that often gets overlooked: the freedom to create your own routine. After decades of compromise, raising children, balancing relationships, managing expectations, there's something almost sacred about waking up and deciding what you want your day to look like. You eat when you're hungry. You rest when you're tired. You go for a walk because you want to, not because someone else penciled it into the calendar. And believe it or not, this simple freedom is powerful medicine for both body and mind. Many seniors report that once they began living alone, their stress levels dropped. Why? Because they weren't constantly trying to navigate someone else's needs or moods. They could move through the day at their own pace. And when your mind is calmer, your body follows. Blood pressure lowers, sleep improves, and you find yourself smiling more often, sometimes for no reason at all. That peace of mind is a real, tangible health benefit, and it starts with being in control of your environment. But it's not just about peace, it's also about reigniting your sense of purpose. It might sound odd at first, but living alone often nudges people into rediscovering old hobbies or passions that were put on the back burner for years. Maybe it's gardening, painting, learning an instrument, or simply getting back into reading those novels that have been gathering dust on the shelf. When you have uninterrupted time to yourself, your creativity wakes up, your curiosity stretches its legs. You start exploring again, not out of obligation but out of genuine interest. And the best part, this kind of personal growth doesn't stop at age 65. In fact, this stage of life can be one of the richest and most rewarding, if you give yourself the space to lean into it. The quiet of your own home becomes a canvas where you can paint a lifestyle that's deeply fulfilling, one brushstroke at a time. Now let's talk about something even more practical: how living alone can actually improve your physical health. You might be thinking, but wouldn't I be more at risk if something went wrong? That's a fair question. But here's what's interesting. When you live alone, you become more tuned in to your own body. You notice small changes faster. You make choices that suit your health without compromise. You're more likely to cook meals you actually enjoy. And surprisingly, that often leads to eating healthier. Think about it. When you live with others, meals can become a juggling act. Trying to please everyone can mean sacrificing your own dietary needs. Maybe you're avoiding salt, but your partner isn't. Maybe you'd rather eat a light dinner, but someone else insists on something heavy. When you're on your own, you make the menu. You shop for what makes you feel good. And studies show that people who eat according to their body's signals, not just out of social obligation, tend to maintain better weight, better blood sugar, and better digestion. And let's not forget the movement. You'd be surprised how much daily activity comes from just tending to your own space. From light cleaning, to walking around the garden, or rearranging your furniture, these little movements add up. You don't need a gym membership or a strict routine. Just the natural rhythm of living in and caring for your space can help keep your body active and mobile on your terms. But perhaps one of the most beautiful benefits of living alone after 65 is the deeper connection you begin to build with yourself. When the house is quiet, when there's no one else steering your time, you begin to really hear your own thoughts. You reflect, you grow, you heal. And that's something few people talk about, the emotional healing that can come with solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude. The kind that allows you to be present with your memories, your dreams, your hopes for the years ahead. You may even find yourself having longer conversations with friends on the phone, reaching out to people in more intentional ways, because your connections aren't rushed or squeezed between obligations. They're chosen. And when you choose your connections, they often become deeper, more meaningful. Living alone doesn't mean living without community. In fact, many people discover their relationships grow stronger when they're no longer living under the same roof as someone else. Distance in the right context can bring clarity and closeness. So yes, living alone after 65 might not be for everyone, but for many it's a gentle return to self, a season of rediscovery, a quiet, powerful step toward a life that finally feels like your own. Now that we've started to explore how living alone can bring peace, purpose, and better health, let's keep going, because the benefits don't stop there. And you know what's really special? Once you've experienced that kind of clarity and peace in your own space, you begin to understand just how much noise you were carrying before, both the external kind and the internal. That quiet home, that stillness you now embrace, gives you room to breathe, to process, and to let go of old stress that maybe you didn't even realize was still lingering. Now there's another piece to this that might surprise you. When you live alone, your confidence actually starts to grow. At first, yes, there might be a few nerves, figuring things out on your own, solving small problems without leaning on someone else. But every time you handle something yourself, whether it's fixing a leaky faucet, learning how to manage a new app on your phone, or just deciding how to spend your day, you build trust in yourself. That sense of self-reliance doesn't just help you function better, it reminds you of your capability. It's empowering. You begin to feel less like someone being taken care of, and more like someone who's still steering their own ship. And don't underestimate the ripple effects of that kind of empowerment. When you feel more confident, you're more likely to say yes to new opportunities. Maybe you join a community class, or you finally take that trip you always dreamed about. You might even take more interest in your personal style again, or how your home looks, because you're doing it for you, not for anyone else. That's a quiet kind of joy that builds up over time, and it changes the way you carry yourself. People start to notice it too. There's a glow in someone who is living life on their own terms. Another thing I've heard from so many people who've chosen to live alone after 65 is how much better they sleep. And that might seem like a small thing, but we both know how precious good sleep is at this stage in life. No one else snoring next to you. No late-night television blaring. No interrupted rhythms. Just your own bedtime, your own rituals, and your own cozy corner of the world. You can read until you're sleepy without worrying about bothering someone else. You can wake up early or sleep in, depending on how you feel that day. These small freedoms add up, and they give your body a chance to recover, reset, and recharge in the most natural way. And when your sleep gets better, everything gets better. You think more clearly, you feel more energetic. Your immune system gets stronger. Even your mood lifts. There's a lightness that returns when your nights are restful and your days are peaceful. It's like your whole system finally has permission to relax and flourish. Let's also take a moment to talk about the emotional strength that develops when you spend time on your own. Sometimes people fear that living alone means being lonely, but those are two very different things. Loneliness is about disconnection. It's about feeling unseen or unheard. But solitude, the kind that comes when you're living alone by choice, can be incredibly healing. It gives you space to reflect, to remember, to process old wounds gently, and to come to terms with things in your own time. You might find yourself journaling more, or listening to music that stirs your spirit, or simply sitting by a window and feeling grateful for how far you've come. And when those moments of emotion do come up, because they will, we all carry stories in our hearts. You don't have to push them down or hide them. You can feel what you need to feel, fully, and then move through it. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's emotional maturity. And believe me, it deepens your wisdom. It softens your edges in all the best ways. You begin to extend more kindness to yourself, and from there to others. You begin to extend more kindness to yourself, and from there to others. What's also interesting is that, with time, many people start to find a deeper connection to the world around them, even if they aren't constantly surrounded by others. They notice the little things, The way the morning light hits the trees outside, the way their cat stretches in the sunlight, the smell of coffee brewing in a quiet kitchen. These little joys start to mean more, not because you have less going on, but because you have the space to really notice them. Living alone tunes you into the present moment, and that kind of awareness is its own form of happiness. And while we're talking about connection, here's something else people rarely mention. Living alone often encourages you to build more meaningful relationships outside the home. When your social life isn't tied up in your living situation, you're free to connect with people who truly lift your spirits. You might call an old friend more often, join a group you actually enjoy, or spend time with family members who energize you instead of drain you. You're no longer just around people, you're choosing them. When you choose your company, it tends to be better company. This shift also teaches you to set healthier boundaries. You start to recognize what kind of energy you want around you, and more importantly, what you don't. When you have a peaceful home, you become more protective of that peace. You learn how to say no without guilt. You start honoring your own needs without apology. And let me tell you, there is so much freedom in that. There's one woman I spoke to recently. She's 72. Lives in a cozy little cottage she fixed up herself. She told me, "I used to think being alone would be scary, but now I look forward to coming home. It's my sanctuary. I light candles in the evening. I listen to jazz, and I talk to my dog like he's my roommate." She laughed when she said it, but her eyes were soft, full of peace. That's what this life can look like. Not lonely, not boring, but full of quiet beauty, where you get to decide what matters most. And that's the heart of it, really. Living alone after 65 isn't about shutting the world out. It's about inviting yourself into a life that fits, into choices that feel right. It's into choices that feel right. It's into choices that feel right. It's into choices. And when you reach that point, when your life feels like it's finally in rhythm with your soul, you'll wonder why you didn't give yourself this gift sooner. Let's keep going, because there's still more to discover about the power and potential of living alone later in life. Something truly beautiful happens when you begin to embrace life on your own terms. You start noticing how much lighter you feel, how your time belongs to you again, and how little by little, you're stepping into a version of yourself that feels more authentic, more peaceful. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you feel completely at home. Not just in your house, but in your own life. But let's talk about something that people don't always acknowledge. When you live alone, you develop a deep sense of emotional resilience, the kind that only comes when you trust yourself fully. And that kind of inner strength is invaluable, especially as you move through the later years of life. There's something empowering about knowing you don't have to depend on someone else to validate your choices, to structure your day, or to tell you how you should feel. You know yourself now. You've been through decades of experiences, joys, heartbreaks, and lessons. And when you sit in the quiet of your own space, you realize that all of it, the love, the loss, the laughter, the struggles, has shaped you into someone who is more than capable of handling whatever comes next. Some people fear that without a constant companion in the house, they'll feel a sense of loss or uncertainty. But what actually happens for many is the opposite. When you're alone with your thoughts, you have the time and space to reflect in a way that brings clarity, not fear. You begin to let go of old regrets, old wounds, old doubts that no longer serve you. And in that stillness, you realize you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're learning how to truly enjoy your own company, to trust in the flow of your own life, and to embrace the wisdom that comes with years of experience. And that wisdom, it's not something to take lightly. It gives you the confidence to set stronger boundaries, to say no to things that drain you, and to surround yourself with people and experiences that genuinely enrich your life. You start to become protective of your time, your energy, your space. You no longer feel obligated to entertain toxic relationships, to engage in meaningless small talk, or to say yes to things just because you think you should. Instead, you choose quality over quantity. You invest in relationships that bring you joy, in activities that make you feel alive, and in moments that actually matter. I once spoke to a woman in her late 60s who told me that when she first started living alone, she worried she'd feel disconnected from the world. But instead, she found herself becoming more intentional about her connections. She called her best friend more often, because she truly wanted to hear her voice, not because they just happened to be in the same house. She started writing letters, actual handwritten letters to her grandchildren, because she wanted them to have something personal to hold on to. She found herself having deeper conversations with people, because every interaction became a choice, not an obligation. And in that choice, in that intention, her relationships became richer, more meaningful, and more fulfilling than ever before. That's the thing about solitude. It doesn't isolate you. It helps you prioritize who and what truly matters. And as you do, you start to see just how much unnecessary noise you used to let into your life. Living alone gives you the chance to filter out the distractions, the drama, the unnecessary stress, and to focus on the things that actually bring you peace and joy. And then there's the simple pleasure of rediscovering what you love, without compromise. Maybe it's something as small as watching your favorite movies, without anyone commenting on them. Maybe it's listening to music from your youth, dancing around the kitchen like nobody's watching, because guess what? No one is watching. Maybe it's staying up late reading a novel that pulls you in, or waking up early just to sip your coffee in silence while the sun rises. These aren't just little moments. They're the foundation of a life that finally feels like it belongs to you. There's also something deeply healing about having space to process your emotions without external influence. When you live alone, you can cry if you need to, laugh out loud at something silly, or simply be without worrying about how someone else might interpret your mood. You get to move through your emotions naturally, without filtering them for the sake of someone else's comfort. And that kind of freedom allows you to truly heal from past hurts, to embrace the fullness of who you are, and to live with a sense of authenticity that so many people spend their whole lives chasing. And here's another beautiful thing that happens. When you have the space to fully be yourself, you also create the opportunity to reinvent yourself. Who says that just because you're over 65, you have to settle into the same routines, the same habits, the same version of yourself you've always known? This is a time for exploration, for discovery, for change. You can pick up a new skill, start a new hobby, travel to places you've always dreamed of, or even change your personal style, just because it makes you happy. You're not living by anyone else's rules anymore. You get to decide what this chapter of your life looks like. And maybe one of the most beautiful realizations of all is that you are enough, just as you are. You don't need a full house to feel complete. You don't need constant noise to feel alive. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You in your own space, in your own rhythm, in your own peace, you are enough. There's a kind of quiet joy that settles into your bones when you truly understand that. A kind of peace that no one can take away from you. And once you find it, once you embrace it, you'll never feel lonely again. Because you'll have yourself, your wisdom, your freedom, your life fully, completely, and beautifully yours. And that is the power of living alone after 65. Not isolation, not emptiness, but wholeness. A life that finally feels like home, because it's been created by you for you. So if you've been wondering whether this path is right for you, take a moment and ask yourself, what do I want? What would make me happiest? What kind of life feels most authentic to me? And then trust your answer. Because deep down you already know,